Nobody's going to want to be with you in this state. Those are often the biggest blocks, is what we're doing to ourselves. But when our hand comes down here, it's like we start realizing, you know what? There are people who care about me. There are people I could turn to right now.
Hello and welcome. You've landed on Zero Limits Living. I'm Dr. Joe Vitale. Every week I bring you inspiration and information to transform your life. This show has now become so popular so quickly, you can now see it or hear it on 1,000 platforms across the planet, including Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire, YouTube, and probably anything you can name, and probably anything you're using right now. But to make it easy for you, I'm putting all the episodes in one place. Go to ZeroLimitsLivingTV.com, ZeroLimitsLivingTV.com, and you can binge there. You can also sign up to be notified whenever there's a new episode. People ask me about coaching. I trademarked my own coaching program almost 20 years ago. It's a system that works. It's proven. It's tested. But find out for yourself. Go to miraclescoaching.com. My latest program has really been doing well. People love it because you get to change the past and create the future out of a new present. Go to mentaltimetravelsystem.com, mentaltimetravelsystem.com. And my latest book, at least so far, is called Unexpected Kindness. And you can go to unexpectedkindnessbook.com. Well, enough about all of that. I'm wearing a shirt, which if you're watching this on YouTube or someplace where you can see the visual, and the shirt says ataraxia on the top of it. And ataraxia is a Greek word, very old. It's basically saying tranquility of mind. It's about serenity, having peace, inner calmness, and most of us don't have it. We don't have it because we've gone through loss, we've gone through regret, we've gone through grief, we've gone through tragedies, and it's a shared experience because most of us remember going through just the pandemic and COVID not so long ago. And in every case, depending on your age, you've gone through some sort of hardship, some sort of loss in your life. I just turned 70, and I can look back over 7 decades, and even in the most recent years, lost my father, lost my mother, lost my best friend, had a family member attempt suicide, went through a ruthless divorce, went through the pandemic. And I'm chuckling now because, on one level, it's overwhelming. It's so overwhelmingly, incomprehensibly painful that it seems like it's a comic tragedy. The point is, what do we do? If you're going through something, if you're going through a loss, you're going through a challenge, what do? I have the world's expert on this subject, a man that I met 20 some years ago. And as time has it and karma has it, he's circled around and we've met each other again. Let me tell you who I have as the guest today, because this is pretty amazing. Ken Druck is an international authority on healing after loss. His books, including The Secrets Men Keep, How to Talk to Your Kids, The Real Rules of Life, Courageous Aging, Raising an Aging Parent, and his new bestseller, which I have in my hand, How We Go On. How We Go On. All of these books are about mastering the what now moments that all of us face in this life at some point, and how to summon the newfound courage to meet these challenges, blessings, and inquiries. Ken's personal journey began after the death of his daughter, Jenna, and his work on the front lines after tragedies including 9/11, Sandy Hook, Columbine have shaped his life's work as a coach, consultant, speaker, educator, trainer, and community leader. This man is a light in a world that at times is flickering in darkness. Please welcome Ken Druck. Ken, how are you?
Oh, thank you for that beautiful introduction. It's so good to be with you again.
Yes.
Here we are circling back, as so many of us do, and we get to meet each other again in this moment of life, and so much has happened. If you and I were sitting over coffee or lunch,
Yeah.
we'd be catching up on everything that's happened in our lives, and how it's shaped us and how we've gone on, how we've met that moment, or we're still meeting it. Or so us and everybody we know is going through some kind of a, as you said so beautifully, a what now moment
Yeah.
where we're, depending on what we do, whether we run into avoidance or we meet that moment, we summon the newfound courage, humility, honesty that we need in that moment to face that moment, whether we meet it or we run from it, really defines the character of our lives, and whether we're going to meet that best possible future.
There's so many ways to begin this conversation. I guess the first is with gratitude. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
And the second is I want to dive because I don't have a whole lot of time with you and I want to help as many people as I can. I mentioned in the introduction what I've gone through. And let me just tell you one other thing here. And you'll relate to this. And I want to know, what do we do about this? It was only a month or so ago that a friend of mine who has 13 kids, and I know all of those kids, I watched them grow up. The oldest died in a plane accident. And when I heard it, and I heard it through Facebook, which it seems like the most impersonal way to find out, I shuddered. It was like a shell shock. Somebody threw a grenade down my throat and it
Mhm.
exploded in my chest. And this was not my child.
Mhm.
This was his, and I know the wife and I know the whole family, the whole thing here. You and I personally know people who have lost their kids. You have lost your child. I don't even know where to begin to process this, Ken. When
Mhm.
somebody goes through this, and I'm doing it at a distance, where do you begin? Where did you begin? You get this call, and your daughter. I'm sorry to bring it up, but by now you must have talked about it 1,000 times.
Mhm.
What do you do? How do you process that? How do you handle that? How do you get to a sense of peace to something that's confusing as hell?
Yeah. I think the first step, Joe, is to understand that we've taken a hit.
Yeah.
Most of us don't know that we're in a state of shock. In the
Mm,
beginning, that's where we go. That's the only way our system has of modulating what's happened, of beginning to process what's happened. It puts us in kind of a coma,
yeah.
a state that we can survive in. You know, I gave my daughter's eulogy. I couldn't do it now. I couldn't do it today. But in a state of shock, in a state of shock, we just kind of go through the motions and we do the best we can. And eventually, in time, the shock wears off and the reality begins to set in. And at that moment, it's like Groundhog Day every day, because we're in a moment of unspeakable,
Yeah.
choiceless agony and pain. Our heart's been ripped out. We look in the mirror and we don't even recognize the person that we've known ourselves to have become. We're a shell of that. Our future has been obliterated as we knew it. And not only has the life of somebody we love, a child, and they say losing a child is the worst loss, has that ended, but our life as we knew it is over as we knew it. Whatever happiness was will never be, it'll be a new happiness, whatever joy was, whatever pain was. And some of us say our trip to the bottom of pain, whatever that has been for anyone, has given us, it's broken us. Our heart is broken, hopefully broken open, not closed. And it's given us the option of understanding the suffering of the world, of becoming a more compassionate being. So we're standing there in Groundhog Day and we look down one path, as I did, and I saw both of my angel daughter, my now angel daughter, and my earth daughter, excuse my language, pissing on my grave. Why? Because I made my pain, the agony that I had, which was understandable, but I made it the central organizing principle of my life.
Mm,
And both daughters are saying, Dad, we should have just buried you when Jenna died. I look down the other path and I see my daughters saying, Dad, we're so proud of you. You fought your way back into life. You took one breath at a time. You gave yourself permission to be broken. Now,
Mm.
people like you and I, Joe, we have talked about wholeness. We've cultivated a wholeness. We've modeled wholeness for thousands of people. Our whole lives have been about that. But the permission to take our foot off our throat and put our hand of kindness, and I can't wait to read your new book, by the way, because I
Thank you.
guarantee you and I are traveling on so many of the same tracks.
Mm.
But to put that hand on our heart of kindness and patience and support and encouragement, humility, understanding, and courage, and gratitude for the blessings that remain, rather than having our foot on our throat, pressuring us. Come on, get over it. Haven't you read that book that, tells you the glass is half full? What the hell's wrong with you? That's a foot on our throat, rushing us, pressuring us, telling us that, oh, come on, you're making too much of it. Look at that guy or look at that person. They've gone, it's comparisons. It's all the things we do to inhibit healing,
Mm.
to pressure ourselves, to ask ourselves not to be really truthful about the fact that we now walk with a limp in our heart. So I think the first step is just saying, you know what, I've taken a hit. This is going to unfold in its own way. What are
Mm.
some things I can do to help myself? Because the first of 8 honorings is my survival. There are
Mm.
8 honorings. The way I continue to express the love that never dies to my daughter and that you feel for your friend's son
Mhm.
and your empathy for your friend and his family and the other siblings, you're right there with them. That's why you're feeling it so deeply. You have no defense mechanism from the sorrow that this dear friend of yours is feeling. How could you? You'd have to make something up that wouldn't be honest or real. But what can we do? How can we honor those we've lost? Or how can we honor ourselves if we've suffered a living loss? You've
Mm.
gone through a divorce you described as horrific and
Mhm.
contentious. My God, talk about getting your heart ripped out, and especially if you haven't been able to bring your relationship to a close in some kind of a reasonable, peaceful way. How many people go through that? How
Mm.
many of their kids get caught in the crossfire? How many of us get a bad diagnosis or have a beloved friend or aging parent that gets a all these what now moments demand that we choose a path slowly, patiently, lovingly, kindly with ourselves of honor. And there are 8 honorings, and we can get into them if you want.
Yes, I do want to, and I'm still processing what you're saying because part of what you're explaining logically makes sense, but in the moment and for quite a while after the initial moment, not only are you in shock, but you feel, I'm speaking for what my experience would be and has been, you feel totally alone.
Yes.
And the people who do, in their best effort to help, say things that don't help.
No,
The words of, "Oh, you'll see them again," or "They're in a better place," or "They're still with you in your heart," to me, those do not help.
no,
I
no.
understand where they're coming from.
That's
Totally
the
understand
thoughts
that.
and prayers school.
Yeah.
And it has a place. When the woman who came up to me a week after my daughter died and said, don't worry, everything works out for the best. Now, when people say,
Sorry.
when I started a nonprofit foundation in my daughter's name and ran it for 20 years to help other families that went through tragedies.
Uh,
But we used to keep a list of the stupidest things people said.
really?
And after 9/11, I ended up coordinating a lot of bereavement after 9/11. We would have the same thing. We created a program called Take the High Road because people are going to say stupid stuff to you. People, they mean well.
Right. They do mean well.
They mean well, but they want to come from that figure it out and fix it mode rather than the be with mode, stand with, walk with,
Yeah.
listen to,
Well,
because yeah,
that's the harder road, I would imagine, because what we're asking them to do is to feel.
Exactly.
to feel
Exactly.
something of what we're feeling, and they are saying things, and they're totally unconscious, and they mean well. I understand. I'm going to keep saying that because I'm not badgering or complaining about them. I am wanting to awaken all of us, myself included, so we
Yes.
are more helpful when we
Yes.
go to talk to people. So
I Yeah, I teach grief literacy at the Harvard School of Public Health. I
wow,
teach young psychiatrists at University of California, San Diego in what I call grief literacy. We are not a grief literate culture.
right.
We say things that we believe that will help, and we message things. When somebody comes up to a bereaved parent and says, "Do you have any other kids?" You kind of want to say, "Oh my God, I have another one at home. What am I so sad about? I've got
Like you lost
another
a
one."
shoe.
So people say things, and after 9/11, we would teach people who had suffered the loss of a loved one, we would teach them also how to respond to the question, how are you doing?
Mm,
Because most of the time, how are you doing is a social nicety. It's not a real question. You shouldn't be trying to explain to anybody who you don't completely, a trusted confidant who you really know can handle the answer, won't try to put a spin or fix you or have a hidden message in what they say. How long have you been grieving this way?
yeah.
There's not what we need. There's a saying we had at the Jenna Druck Center. Compassion is your pain in my heart.
Mm. Wow, compassion is
Compassion,
your pain in my heart. I
and
feel that.
compassion is also my joy
Mm,
in your heart. And joy, your friend, the friend who lost a child, you shared the
mhm.
joys of his
Yes.
13 children,
Oh, I feel that. Yes.
of his fatherhood. And we as men, we give each other such love and honor and brotherhood when we can feel each other's joy instead of being in that perpetual pissing contest. you know so
Yes.
you honored and loved your friend, and when we have that and we take them all the way into our hearts, and then something happens, our heart breaks with them.
Yeah.
They're able to be with us
Yeah.
rather than to try to fix us. Now, do we all do it perfectly? No. It's something we're all learning. We're all ripening as human beings. Facing those what now moments in our own lives gives us the ability to really be with other people intimately in their darkest, in that dark night of the soul moment that's going on in their life.
Yeah.
Maybe they have a kid, an estranged child, or a child strung out on drugs, or somebody in their family. We just got through the holiday seasons, and it just ripped their heart open again, that I can't seem to connect with my family when and I've got that one person in the family who wants to polarize into political conversations immediately and tell the
Right.
rest of us that we don't know what the hell we're doing, or
Yeah.
we're not thinking rationally.
Yeah.
So
Well,
anyhow, yeah.
this is all wonderful, and I love you. I love your experience. You're coming from a place of earned wisdom,
Thank
and
you.
I want to pick some of these
Please.
nuggets from you. And one of them that comes to mind is, because I've heard this expressed by other people, and I've wondered myself, how long does grief last? I know a friend who
Yeah.
lost his wife fairly suddenly, and it's been a year. And I know he's grieving, and we're very close, so we share, and he tells me what's going on. And there are some people who have walked up and said, it's been a year. Move on. Go get a nap
I have
and get on a
I've had
date.
that too. I've had that
And
too.
how is I want to answer it myself, but I'm just going to struggle in an awkward moment trying to
Yeah,
come up with an answer that might make
please.
sense. When you're here, tell us, when somebody is grieving, is there some sort of natural cycle rhythm, or is it entirely unique to the person?
It's both.
Yeah.
They're they're everybody is on their own grief journey.
Mm.
And I think the most dangerous word in the grief vocabulary is closure.
Mm.
Because when you tell somebody, do you have closure or whatever, it's locking the door. It's saying you no longer have permission in my book to continue to feel the sorrow that you feel about what happened or
Mm.
what didn't happen, rather than saying, you know what, grief takes as long as it takes.
Yeah.
And there are seasons of grief. In the very beginning, every other thought triggers the thought of how that person died or how a relationship ended, or or when I went to the doctor and got the bad diagnosis, or when somebody went missing in our world. Somebody was kidnapped, which is not a completely uncommon thing in today's world. But
Mhm.
my point is that everybody goes through it differently. There's no cookie cutter. Everybody grieves differently. If you have suffered losses and your heart knows that somehow, some way, even though this is different, I'm going to rise out of these ashes, and I know about the love that never dies.
Yeah.
And I'm going to love this person even more. And I'm going to feel their love even more than I was when they were alive and here and present. So I think everybody brings a different psychology to their grief, to their loss, to what they're going through, and different resources. Some of us have friends. We're blessed with supportive friends, and we're surrounded by hugs and assurances and people willing to bring over food and people willing to light candles and people willing to listen even past the first year.
Mm.
How's it going now? So
Mm.
there's no judgment. We've lost that. We're in a judgment-free zone. There's no room for judgment in honoring and supporting somebody who's suffered a loss. Now, are there points at which somebody is in such denial about their grief or such avoidance, and they're not processing anything of their grief, where it becomes an indifference to their own well-being? Yes. Where it becomes depression, real depression. And when we're depressed, we don't grieve. We've shut down all systems.
Mm.
So people who allow depression to take over don't get the support they need, aren't taking the time to process. It also can become, you think about all the people who are committing crimes and doing heinous things in the world. How do these people get to be that way? These
Yeah.
mass shootings or whatever the hell that's going on, often you trace it back, you deconstruct their psychology, and you find a wall of unprocessed grief.
Mm.
They've suffered a horrible loss. And what's happened in suffering that loss, what's happened is they have become indifferent to the pain of other people. They don't care. They don't think about it. They don't
Yeah.
process it because they're so cut off from their own emotions. So there's a
Wow.
sociopathy, or, you know, there's a mental health condition that's hardened them to the point they can justify doing heinous things and to being violent. So everybody processes grief differently. You can ask somebody, but not with a hidden message. It's like I could say, Joe, it's been 6 months since you got divorced. You okay now? You know,
Mm.
I
Yeah.
run a partner loss support group. Everybody on a weekly basis, everybody in that support group is completely different, processing it different, dealing with different issues. If there are kids involved, they've got kids saying, Dad, are you okay? Or Mom, are you okay? If there are friends, and depending on the friends they have. So I'm hoping that you and I are creating a conversation that anybody listening is just going to say, I'm going to keep my hand on my heart.
Yeah.
I'm going to
Yeah.
catch myself with my foot on my throat, telling
Yeah.
myself, I'm taking too long. And with my hand on my heart, I'm going to get the support that I need. I'm not going to be resistant, stubborn, arrogant, in denial, in avoidance, and not truthful with myself. My integrity is going to be truthful. And if I need help and need to be vulnerable, I'm going to get it.
Mhm. And when somebody goes to get help, what is your recommendation? You just said you run a group. I know you do consulting. I know you have all kind of books, including the new one, which is great. How we go on. But they're sitting there. Maybe they just got the shell shock. Maybe they're listening to this show, and they're feeling alone. What would be your recommendation? Therapist, counselor, coach, group? books.
Believing Before Seeing, a new bestseller by Candace Barr. Order your copy today.
I often will go to an organization like a hospice or to the top oncology people in the community
Mhm.
and or to nurses in oncology and say, I'm dealing with a loss or my best friend is dealing with a loss and I'm looking to know resources in our community where there might be support groups, there might be doctors that really have trained and understand and are grief literate. I'm not a psychiatrist. You walk in and they pathologize your condition immediately and put you on medication.
Mm.
You want somebody who genuinely and honestly can be with you and give you that safe space, not to hear what they're going to tell you to do, but to listen to what you feel your options are and what's weighing most heavily on your heart. What's
Mm.
weighing most heavily this week, the next week? I give people, not only my coaching, I give people a kind of a morning meditation. I do a walk every morning. Next time you're out here, you got to come walk with me.
Okay.
It's a beautiful walk along a trail and it's my natural thing. But I also, it's a kind of a walking meditation.
Hmm.
And I bring with me a couple of questions. And today, what's most weighing most heavily on my heart is, I'll almost always ask myself that. So it's time with me to reflect and be honest with. It's practicing being honest with myself
Yeah.
and giving myself air time to reflect as I'm walking through nature and the dog's running ahead of me. And maybe I'll ask myself, what's making my heart sing today? Today,
Mm.
my heart is singing because, and then there might be a question about a gratitude. Today, the gratitude in my heart that's swelling in my heart is for what? And so on
Mhm.
and so forth. So I think everybody has different questions, but I think if you start with yourself and your own kindness and your own messaging and permission to be honest with yourself, and you can start communicating it to trusted confidants. It could be a priest, a rabbi, an imam. It could be a counselor or a coach that you've heard understands this work. Sometimes, if you've read a book, like a lot of people read my book, but they're from
Mhm.
Victoria this last week. And
Mm.
they call me and say, who can I see in Victoria? Ken, do you know of any wonderful people? And sometimes I do, or I can
Mm.
help them find out. So I think also turning to people like you, Joe, and who understand, who know the playing field, and a lot of leaders who are really literate in areas like grief, and getting a name and a referral can help too.
I I need to frame a question that could be considered blunt. And I'm asking in love because I know there's people that aren't at the place you just described. The
Yes.
place you just described, there is some clarity that I'm hurting and some clarity that I should ask for help. But before that clarity, that shock is still there, and there isn't self-compassion. There's worse than self-criticism. I know that your book, How We Go On, talks about self-compassion right there on the subtitle. So I know that's an important essence to success in healing. But I'm also pointing out, what about in that moment before we are being compassionate?
Where we've
I
got
will
our
tell
foot
you,
on our throat.
the foot is on the throat, and it's your own foot on your
That's
own
right.
throat.
That's right.
But I know this, Ken. I know this firsthand. I also know that during the period that I described to you, I felt incredibly alone. Incredibly alone. It was also during the pandemic, so it wasn't so easy to
Oh
see
my God.
anybody.
Oh
You
my
know,
God.
everything was started to be whoever invented Zoom is now a billionaire because we're all using it thanks to the pandemic.
Yes.
Anyway, during that time, I can look and go, oh, look, I have 1 million Instagram followers. I have 500,000 people on Facebook. I have thousands of friends. You know what? When push comes to shove and you're hurting and you're in the corner and you're crying, there's nobody there.
No. No.
What do you do in that moment, Ken? That's what I'm asking you're hurting, shell shocked before the clarity of, oh, I can make a phone call. Oh, let me call Ken. Let me go read how we go on. How do we get to the clarity?
Start here. Start with kindness and
Yeah.
honesty. I feel so alone. I not only, the reason why a lot of people, after they've suffered a life loss, they've lost somebody they love,
Yeah.
or they isolate, is because we're afraid, I'm so broken, I'm so vulnerable, nobody's going to want to be around me in this state. I'm not lovable this way.
Yeah.
So I better just crawl into a hole and hide until I become, marketable again. So I think the first step is just to say, I'm not going to reject myself in this state. I'm not going to judge myself. My foot is off my throat. I'm catching myself. Even the things I say to myself, I haven't realized I've been saying that to myself for years. I've been secretly self-critical, but now I'm catching myself. Did I just say that to myself? You're all alone. Look at you. You're pathetic. Or nobody's going to want to be with you in this state. Those are often the biggest blocks, is what we're doing to ourselves. But when our hand comes down here, it's like we start realizing, you know what? There are people who care about me. There are people I could turn to right now. And even if there's nobody that right now I have as a trusted confidant, there are people in the community that I live that I can reach out to and say, you know what? I'm not used to this, but I need help right now. I'm all alone. I feel utterly alone. And I feel lost. And it's that hand on our heart that says, behind that aloneness, I will keep the faith that there is togetherness. Behind this emptiness that I feel, this hollow emptiness, is a fullness that I'm going to work towards. It's not there right now. Behind this lostness that I feel, we put behind this brokenheartedness, there is life, there's love, there's fullness, there's beauty. And it's that keeping that faith and saying, I'm going to just keep my faith. I'm going to keep my hand on my heart. I'm going to keep summoning that newfound strength. Sometimes we think back to, God, look at the stuff that I've been through. How did I get the courage to do what I've done? How did I summon and call forth the courage to get married or to have kids or to do the work that I do in the world, to put myself out in front of millions of people, to believe in my own ability to form thoughts that could help other people? We've done, and sometimes it's looking back and saying, I've been courageous. There are things I've done, and I'm being called to be courageous again and to be faithful again and to believe in myself, even though I'm utterly alone and I'm in a dark and difficult place. I'm going to believe in myself, and I'm going to take one breath at a time, one day at a time, one step at a time, and work my way back towards that best possible future. Because right now, all I'm doing is showing myself the worst possible future.
Wow. For some reason, that last comment just triggered something I want to share because it may be useful to somebody
Please.
listening or watching. When I was going through the long divorce, I didn't know it'd be long in the beginning, but I was hurting and confused. And in a world that I didn't understand, I asked the young attorney there, I said, this is your life. You do this all the time. I said, this is confusing to me. I don't know what to do. I said, what is the best advice you ever heard to give somebody who was going through a divorce?
Great
And
question.
he thought for a while, and then he said, focus on the future. And I never forgot it. I don't know that I fully accepted it or acknowledged it in the moment because I wanted something else than that. But focus on the future was telling me, oh, wait a minute. First of all, there's a future. And then second of all, I kind of get to co-create it in some way.
That's
So
right.
it gave me this feeling of
Yes.
empowerment.
In
So
We Go On book, I talk about that. I have a reimagining exercise.
yes.
How can I begin to reimagine? Am I willing to see myself even just smiling
Yeah.
or to see myself with a heart that's more at peace. Doesn't have to be at peace,
Yeah.
you know.
Right.
It can be just a simple element of peace. Sometimes we try to bite off too big bites
Right.
rather than, you know what? Let me just see myself smiling. Let me just feel myself being on the other side of this. Let me give myself a glimpse, just a glimpse of a best possible future where I've dug out of this. You know, I used to pray and work for days like that for a couple of years, Joe. I can't tell you,
Hmm.
I can't tell you how much pain I suffered that my daughter's life had been lost to her. You know, it's like, how dare I go on and, oh, what am I going to have for dinner tonight? What am I going to wear today? What new horizon am I going to achieve in my career? My daughter's life has been lost to her. She was a shining star. My daughter was a radiant, one in a billion person, you know. So how do we go on? Sometimes, you know, it's just keeping that hand of faith on our hearts and saying, it's hell right now.
Yeah.
I hate this. Permission to say, you know, as a lot of the kids say, this sucks. This is
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah.
Don't try to talk me out of that. This is terrible. But it's not all terrible. And what I often explain to parents is what started as the purest form of love that became an unspeakable sorrow wants to become love again.
Ugh,
And so one of the honorings
I
is
feel it.
the love that never dies, you know, and as your brother and friend who's been reunited with you today, I would say after this divorce, I would say, Joe, please keep that hand on your heart. You are such an extraordinary man.
Mhm.
And I'm so sorry for the way you've suffered, just as I can feel your pain as I talk about my daughter.
Yeah.
But let's walk with each other and stand with each other and be with each other through these sorrows to a brighter day, because I know there are so many bright days ahead for you. Loving days, personally wonderful days. And you would say the same thing to me.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. I'm almost speechless there. I'm backpedaling to think in my head, what am I supposed to say now? Where do I take this to the next level? But I do have a key question for you.
Please,
In
please.
my mind, Dr. Ken, you have, in my mind, the way I'm looking at it, the hardest job on the planet. And I'm saying that because the people you're meeting are people who are so shocked. They've been in war, they've been in school shootings, they've been in divorce, they've been in losing their kids. From what I can see from your bio, what I can see from, you have several books, and from the new one, How We Go On, that the clientele are the wounded that are coming to you. And my question is, how do you take care of you during this sea? This is an ocean of sadness, an ocean of tears coming to you. How do you take care of you? How do you maintain clarity? Your answer could be useful to all of us
Yes, yes.
and the little boats we're in that we're rocking in.
I First of all, I give a program. I have a little pamphlet called the Self-Care Handbook.
Ah,
And it was hard fought and well earned, because unless I addressed your beautiful question successfully, I'd have no business doing what I do.
right.
So I start my day with a walk in
Mm-hmm.
nature.
Mm-hmm.
And I would contest that anybody, anywhere has a nature trail or somewhere with trees or with water that you could walk near and do that a couple of times a week or once a week or whenever. But walking in nature for me, we're feeling the heartbeat of this planet that we're on. We're soaring through, you know, we have Neil deGrasse Tyson who told us this year, we don't just live in the universe, it's universes. You know, we're soaring through space. This is our time to be here. And that reminder of the way things have been through the ages, through millennia, what we're a part of that's so far beyond our ability to truly comprehend, that we're in the middle of this divine mystery. and to allow to humble ourselves, because we're so used to controlling every element. And as our hearts are breaking, suddenly we have control over nothing. But I walk in nature and I ask myself those questions that I mentioned before.
Mhm.
Oh, what's weighing most heavily on my heart? And just the direct truth. No fancy justifying and dancing around. And I've learned to be so direct and honest with myself. And what's making my heart, and I balance out, the eighth honoring is balancing the books. The eighth honoring of going through a dark night of the soul moment, that what now moment that's unspeakably difficult. And so I do that. I also will tell you that the way I meet with people involves a lot of humor. Now, that may sound crazy. What? You go to Sandy Hook and you're meeting with the parents of 5 and 6 year old kids who've been murdered by an AK, and humor? You have no idea how much, when people laugh in a group, and not that I'm telling jokes, but the way we talk to each other, the intimacy is so beautiful, is so pure, and is so beautiful that it lends itself to lightheartedness. It creates lightheartedness naturally,
Wow.
organically, and people are laughing. If anybody came by my partner law support group tomorrow night, they would be amazed. What the hell is that? People are laughing in there. I thought that was a grief group.
Wow. Hmm.
So the workshops, the programs I do them in a way that is life-giving, life-affirming, honest. It's such a relief for people to be in a judgment-free zone where they can tell the truth about how difficult it has been. And what it does is it gives way to, and it clears the path forward in their heart and in their life,
Hmm.
to consider their options and ways they can take better care of themselves. I call them the self-care saboteurs. There are 8 self-care saboteurs, things that we can do. We all know how to take care of ourselves. We all know what we need to do, but we don't do it. Why? Because we've got these self-care saboteurs that that sabotage, that destroy
Tell
our
me, tell
attempts
me
to
one
do.
or two of them. Tell us.
Well, perfectionism is
Oh
one of
yeah.
the favorites,
Yes.
you know, and then some of us walking around with that never enough. We just play not doing enough. I'm not loving enough. I'm not
Yeah.
giving enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not working hard enough.
Yeah.
I'm not successful enough. I'm not handsome enough or beautiful enough. Men and women have their own favorites here. So whatever those are, when we do that, when we're having conversations like that with our foot on our throat, trying
Hmm.
to build a case, it's like being in a courtroom with only a prosecuting attorney, no judge, no jury, no defense attorney, only the
Yeah.
prosecutor producing evidence,
Yeah.
that
Against you.
admonishing finger in your face,
Yeah.
telling you, and you're buying it. You're actually listening to that crap
Right.
rather than saying, with a defense attorney, or a judge would say, that's ridiculous. That's a leading question. I dismiss that. I dismiss the whole case.
I love all of this. Now, why did you write your book? We're going to run out of time, but I want to make sure I honor why you're here and what
Thank
you're
you, Joe.
doing.
Joe,
And
you know why I'm here?
yeah,
I'm
I mean,
loving.
no.
I might have started by saying, you know what? I'm promoting my book. I want to touch so many hearts and lives, and I've written the best book of my life. But what this has turned into is a reigniting of a friendship with you.
Hmm.
And that's what most means the most to me right at this moment.
Oh, wow.
So I love and appreciate you for wanting to support something I put 2 years into writing, and that has value. And I'll tell you a little. And it wrote me, by the way.
Ah,
My boss told me I'd written 3 books, and he said, "Why don't you take a couple of years off? Go have your life." And my boss is me, of course. So, and I did. I took a couple of years off, and then I woke up one morning, and I was with book. It's the closest
wow.
we as men come to having
Yes.
children,
Oh, yes.
on our own. So I
Mhm.
was with book, and the words, how we go on, felt like the thread that's run through my whole life's work. It's really about that resilience, that resilient spirit, and how we cultivate it, how we go on from life, including in the last chapter is how we go on from death. It's like the subject, the first paragraph of the last chapter says,
Yes.
how presumptuous of me to have you believe that I've written a chapter about death and you're going to feel somehow different about the subject none of us wants to talk about and deal with. But you're going to feel somehow different about death because you will have found some measure of peace. You will have put your house in order spiritually, emotionally, physically, legally, financially, with your family, with the people that you love. And so it wrote me,
Yeah.
and I feel like it's a gift also to my grandsons and my daughter and the world,
Yes.
anybody who comes in contact with it. But
Absolutely. Congratulations. How we go on. Self-compassion, courage, and gratitude on the path forward, Ken Druck. And you have a website, isn't it the same as the title, howwegoon.com?
There's a howwegoon.com just for the book. And
Uh-huh.
if you want to find out all about the work that I do and be in contact with me, you go to kendruck.com. Just KENDRUCK.com.
So I'm not going to let you go just yet. I want to ask, what was the question you were hoping I would ask? What did you really want to talk about when you heard, oh, Dr. Joe's going to interview me? We haven't talked in 20 years. What were you hoping we would get to? Because here's our chance to get to it.
It wasn't a question. It was my prayer and wish that I would be with you and you would be the same soulful, loving, brilliant man that I had met many years ago, who would have an even greater capacity to be with me and to speak about when you have so much to share with the world, but for us to share the stage and to share your living room and to draw out the best in me. And I feel like you have done that and beyond.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I feel you, and I am touched, and my eyes are a little teary here. I again am thinking of the people watching or listening, and I really want to be of help. What do you think is the most important thing somebody needs to know or do that has just been walloped by life in whatever form it came?
Get your foot off of your
Your
throat
throat.
and put your hand on your heart and become your best friend.
Mm.
Become what your best friend would be to you, with kindness and support and encouragement, humility, honesty, faith, to
Mm.
tell you we're going to get through this. We're going to get to the other side of this. And I'm with you every step of the way. And I'm listening to you. You're directing the traffic, and I'm here. I love you. That's what I would do. Be that best friend to yourself, truly, and catch yourself up here. You're not doing it because you're a bad person. We
Yeah.
just, all of us, I have to catch myself every day. We're not conscious of what we're doing. But when we bring that hand down and we start treating ourselves with kindness, we open the path forward to our best possible future.
So I began by talking about the shirt I was wearing, and for those who can't see it, it says ataraxia, the Greek word for serenity, tranquility of mind. Can have you achieved that? Do you have peace of mind?
I do. I do. And my peace of mind is the kind of peace of mind. My heart is calm. My
Mm.
heart is complete. I've lived such a blessed life, even though I've had my heart ripped out by my
Yeah,
daughter's death.
yeah.
But I allow room to be in turbulence at times. That's part of the peace, is that I have permission to feel lost occasionally, to not know where I am in space. I got a kind of precarious diagnosis from an MRI 3 weeks ago. And I
Mm.
go to see my neurosurgeon, a neurosurgeon tomorrow morning. So am I at peace? Yeah, I'm at peace. I've made peace for the most part. I've put my house in order. Even all that uncluttering, Joe. What do we do with all our stuff? I cleaned out my files so my
Yeah,
daughter and my wife don't have to, fuss with it for 2 years.
right.
But but I am at peace, but I also give myself permission to deepen my peace by
Mhm.
allowing lostness, emptiness that is natural, lostness, which is natural, turbulence, which is part of life, unknowingness. I'm in the middle of a mystery. So for me, that peace incorporates all those other elements, the allowing of myself to be human.
I'm going to squeeze in another question or two before
Yeah.
they get the hook and pull me off stage here. And one of them is, do you believe in a higher power? Call it divine, God, providence, fortune, Gaia, the cosmos.
The
Is there
answer is
something
yes.
else?
The answer is yes. I believe that there are forces in this universe and in this life that are so much greater than I, that have something to do with the miracle
Yeah.
that allows me to draw nourishment from air, that allows me, my emotions to surface into my mind and to be able to tell you how I feel and how close I feel to you right now.
Mhm.
Allows us to create an intimacy and to share and to feel the questions and the pain and the triumphs of people listening. Those are miracles. Those miracles are so much greater than anything I could have created. So I'm a part of this grand divine mystery. I don't even have titles and names. Sometimes I use them. I'll use something and I'll talk about God, or I'll talk about a higher power or a
Yeah.
creator or a creative force or the universe. Um, but it's there. And can I end? Do I have 1 minute to end on a story?
Yes. Go ahead. Please, please
So,
tell us.
so sometimes our faith is revealed to us in the saddest of times.
Hmm.
And when my daughter died, I wanted I wanted to spit in the face of the universe.
Mhm.
How could a beautiful 21-year-old who's taking the world by storm, who has the most beautiful heart, who's a visionary leader at 21, who is giving YPO programs at 13 with me, who is the president, who had infiltrated MTV because she hated the misogyny and a lot of the song language. How does that happen? And it was only after me railing at what I called to be God, I mean railing and raging, that I was able to see a tear in the eye of God,
Hmm.
that God was crying with me, that if there, whatever that is, that divine power, that God was crying with me, and that I had constructed a picture of God as the puppeteer. He's watching over everything. Something bad happens, that's God. That's and it changed my whole sense of what a higher power is,
Yeah.
the force of goodness and love in the world, the force of faith,
Yeah.
the force of never give up. You hang in there, I'm with you. And that's what I believe is, that's the divinity that I carry.
That is absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for making time. Thank you for your work. Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for all your books. Thank you for the new book, How We Go On.
Joe, you're a blessing in all of our lives. And today you graciously invited me into your living room. And I can't tell you how grateful I am to you. You made my day and beyond. And I'll look forward to our time together.
Yes, in our walk.
I'll look forward to that.
Oh, thank you.
Blessings.
Everybody, when I was going through what I talked about earlier with the pandemic, divorce, and so forth, I was seeing healers and counselors and people who can help. And I remember one of them telling me in an email, he says, "Don't worry, Joe." He says, "You will be happy again one day." And when I looked at it, I was not happy. In that moment, I was not happy, but he was correct. Time went on, and there were happier days again. and I'm passing it along to you in case you needed to hear it. I'm Dr. Joe Vitale. You've been listening or watching here, Zero Limits Living. Every week, I bring you inspiration and information to transform your life. The show's now being seen or heard on 1,000 different places around the galaxy, including Roku, Apple TV, Amazon, YouTube, and 1,000 other places, as I mentioned. Or just go to ZeroLimitsLivingTV.com and check it all out. I want to thank everybody involved in making this show happen, from Lux Media Studios, Nick in the camera operator today, Candace Barr, and all of you who are watching this. You're the ones bringing light to the world. I'm sending love to all of you and expect miracles.